welcome you to the Kingdom Hour, where we are empowering and equipping individuals to succeed in everyday life with real life stories, providing kingdom insights for transforming your destiny and purpose. Our programming is designed to develop character, empower and equip leaders, transforming visions of entrepreneurs, developing a successful financial code, and living a victorious life. Join me every week on Brooklyn Free Speech TV. Subscribe also to our YouTube channel, KEITV12. Thanks for watching. Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Dr. Donna Ghanney, and you're watching the Kingdom Hour on Brick TV. And we are here with a very wonderful guest. His name is Maxwell Ivey, and we're going to call him Max today. And he's going to share some wonderful insights about how you can be successful as an entrepreneur. And also, he's going to share some key information in other areas. But before we begin, Max, can you please open us in prayer?
Right. Today, I want to ask my Heavenly Father to watch over us as we have a conversation, as we share our experiences and the lessons that He has taught us as we go through our daily lives. We share these things with other people in the hopes of inspiring, motivating, and uplifting them so that they can go out and do their own works in Your name. And I also want to give You thanks for recently my younger brother. He had a heart attack, and I know it was You who sent the people to him that did the CPR, that got him to the emergency room, that treated him so well for so many days. And I believe it's through You and through the prayers of all my friends and family online that he will be coming home to us shortly and will be healthy and live a long life and be a great example to You. So I know that a lot of times we give prayers, we ask for things, but often the most important prayer is to give thanks. And I want to give you all the thanks and praise in the world. And I say this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Max. And again, it's so wonderful to have you here. You have an awesome story. And I'm anxious to hear more about your book, Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light. But before we go there, can you tell us about yourself? How did you get to the point of writing your book?
Right. Well, first off, people should know that I am almost totally blind. I was born with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative disease that affects the retina and causes you to lose your vision over time. But I was born into a family of carnival owners, people who do things. And over the years, my wide extended family, they found ways for me to participate in the family business. After college, I was able to travel with the family. I did the bookings and operated some kids' games and was very happy doing that until the early death of my father led to the closure of the carnival. And I had to figure out what to do next. And thankfully, I had helped him sell rides when we needed to. So I decided to try to make that a profession. And I've been very blessed that not only was I able to do that, but that the process of doing it has taught me so much more about myself. It made me realize that I have so many more talents that I can be thankful for than I thought before that happened. So I started the Midway Marketplace. That led to blogging, recording videos, and then I was online promoting the posts for that website, and people said, Max, you have a great story. You need to share it more. And we see you as very inspirational. Whenever we see you do stuff, it's like, if he's doing it, why aren't we doing it? What is our excuse? Wow. And I thought this for a long time. I'm like, I'm nobody special. I just show up and I work hard and I do my best to build a business to raise it to support my family. That's all I'm doing. But the thing they finally convinced me of is that there are so many people out there who have no real excuse. They have no physical disability. They may come from a bad neighborhood or been raised in a troubled family. They may have their problems, but they tell me, Max, a lot of people have no real reason why they can't be doing more in their lives, and they need people like you to remind them that they can and they should. So you really need to share more. That resulted in me starting a second website, theblindblogger.net, where I share my personal experiences as far as being an entrepreneur who happens to be blind. Mm-hmm. And I was responding to some comments on a blog post for a friend of mine named Eve Koivula. I have trouble saying that name right. I mentioned it because she was a big step in this whole process. She said, Max, we would like to have you be part of a summit. But in order to do this, you need to have a product or a service that you can either give away or sell at a discount. So how about writing a book? And I'm like, well, I've never written a book before, never thought I wanted to write one, wouldn't have the first idea what to write about. And she said, well, Max, I'm going to share a quote with you that is my favorite from Richard Branson. And she said, Richard Branson likes to tell people, promise to deliver and then figure out how. And I told her, I said, okay, so you want me to come up with an ebook in the next couple of months? And I said, okay, I'll give it my best effort. But if I don't finish it on time, you're the one who started this mess. So she come back, and a few weeks later, she goes, Max, there's 4 other women in the summit, and they've decided that they want to make this an all-female thing so that it'll have a better marketing hook, and you're out. Oh. And I said, look, I'm not mad or nothing. I said, I come from a carnival family. I've got show business blood in my background. I know what it means to need to put butts in the seats or nowadays faces behind the screen. So I wasn't upset. I said, but you got me started, so I'm going to finish this book. I kept writing it. Eventually, I shared it with my editor, Lorraine regularly, who has been with me on both of my books and who will be with me on my next book project. And we got it edited and formatted and submitted to Amazon CreateSpace, and it's been a great experience. And the one thing I like to remember about this whole deal is it was not part of my plans. It had to be inspired by somebody else's plans, and it had to come at the right time and place where I would be willing to entertain the idea. But the one thing I tell people about this whole experience is like, the best thing you can have in your life is a good friend who will double dog dare you to do something they know you're scared of.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of what Eve did. She double dog dared me to write a book in 2 months. And I didn't finish it in 2 months. It was more like 4 or 5 by the time it was online. But the experience of finding out that I not only could write, but that I loved to write, something that I enjoyed when I was in junior high and high school and college, but something, I just hadn't done much of over the previous 10 or 15 years. So to rediscover my love for writing, and then to have a book that, in my opinion, it's a very strong book for it being a short book. And it's unique in that it's one of the few books that offers people advice on how to go after that big goal or dream, that includes the contact information for the author. I mean, a lot of authors will list their website, but very few of them will give you their email address and tell you that they want to hear from you as you go through the steps. They want to hear about your progress. And I did that for 2 reasons. One, I know way too many people who have read the book, listened to the audio tape, watched the video, been to seminars, spent lots of money, and they're still in the same place they were before they started. And I think that's something I didn't want to have happen with my book. I felt like if this book is about me sharing how I got here and helping other people do it, then it needs to be more about them than about me. And I understand that is very unusual in the whole writing marketplace. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just the way I approach the whole thing. And the other thing is when you're doing something new, something that probably nobody else in your circle has ever thought of you as doing, you're not going to have a lot of friendly, helpful, supportive voices. And I felt like if I'm going to challenge somebody to do something scary, they need to have at least one person who will listen and understand. And if he doesn't understand, will at least try to understand, which is the key.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with you. I think when you decide to be an entrepreneur or an author, you definitely have she instilled an urgency there too. She said in 2 months, so it was like, you're determined to meet that deadline and you're gonna get there. And I'm sure you face challenges along the way. Can you tell us about some of the challenges? Because you pointed out one, having a surrounded support group to encourage you along the way. So let's talk about that.
Right. Well, one of the things that I do and I encourage other people to do is you don't have to meet somebody in person for them to be your friend, for them to be somebody you can depend on. And over my years in blogging and podcasting and working online, I have met a lot of great people. I usually started out meeting them by leaving a comment on their blog, and I tend to stand out because I generally leave longer, more memorable comments than most people do. Having exchanges online that lead to email messages. And so people that I've never met before yesterday can become my friends online, and people that I trust and people that will support and encourage me. And some people say that's just not possible. And I say that if you consider the world we're living in now today, not only is it possible, but I think it's almost a necessity, because so many people that are entrepreneurs online. They work from home. They spend a lot of time in solitude. So,
yeah.
Building that network of people, I mentioned my editor, who without her, I wouldn't have been able to finish the book. She found me because I was, whenever I posted a new equipment listing or a blog post that had a photo, the first thing I would do before really sharing it actively is I would post it on my primary page, and I would go, "Would y'all please tell me if this looks okay?" And Lorraine noticed that Lorraine noticed that my photos and my blog posts were not coming out right. They weren't centered, and sometimes they were ending up covering up text so people couldn't really read the post and understand it. And so she we got online, and then we got on Skype, and she helped me figure out how to change the settings in the program I use to write my blog posts with, to where now the pictures, they come out where I expect them to come out, and people can read the posts. So that's one of those cases where, I met this person online, didn't know her from Adam one day, and a few weeks later, she's helping me fix my website. And that happens to me all the time. And, Adrienne Smith, who's used to be referred to as the blog commenting superstar. Now she's got other things she's into, but she was the one who really taught me that you can build relationships online through commenting, through just being a helpful person to other bloggers by sharing their content and stuff like that. And it really has worked. Just recently, when I was in New York City, I met up with Ryan Bedolf, who's known as the Blogger from Paradise. He's in my opinion, he's one of the rock stars. He doesn't see himself that way, thank goodness. So, but when I started my plans to go to New York City by myself as a blind person, I was worried about, would the story be big enough for its own book? And, Ryan is a guy, he's written lots of books, and he has a lot of experience in this area, and he sent me a really nice email. He said, Max, don't force the story. Don't try to decide what your experience or adventure is going to be like before you have it. Just enjoy every minute, write as much of it down as you can, and let the story tell itself. And I can't tell you how much that helped me. And this is a guy, like I say, I met him through his blog. And I really think that there are opportunities like that out there for everybody. It's not something special because I'm a blind blogger. It's just because I go out of my way to connect with people through their online platforms, and people, they react to somebody who's sincerely trying to meet and learn from other people.
Wow. So Maxwell, what was it like to grow up in a carnival as a child? What tell us about that experience?
Right. Well, one of the things that made my growing up different than it would be today is that back then carnivals were all family owned. They operated from March till October. The parents and grandparents would put kids in school while other relatives would work until the school year was over and you could go join them on the road. The rides cost a lot less money, and there were a lot less rides at fairs. My grandfather's carnival had 8 or 9 rides at its height in the 50s and early 60s, and played some of the bigger fairs in Texas with 9 rides. You can't do that anymore. His biggest ride he ever owned was a regular Ferris wheel, which is nothing like what they have today. But the thing I remember most is my grandfather had 6 kids, and so we had lots of aunts and uncles and cousins. My grandfather bought a piece of property and either gave land to his kids or built homes for them. So we were all within walking distance of each other. We played together. Some of the other kids would change the rules of the game so I could play with them. We always had lots of people that were related to you who would look out for you. And it was that way when we went to school as well. I mean, my brother to this day hates his school experience because he was a year behind me. And every year he went to school, he had to deal with a teacher who had me the year before. So most of the people knew the Wagners and the Iveys and the Cerbers and the Crouches. We were pretty much all part of this big family that lived out in the country. And some part of the year we would go travel with the carnival.
That's really awesome. It sounds like you had a good life growing up, and most children would probably love to be at a carnival for a long period of time. What sparked you to write your book? You told us about the person that came into your life and gave you that urgency, and then all of a sudden you start writing about leading you out of the darkness into the light. How did you come about with that title? And go ahead.
Right. Well, the idea for the book, we talked about that a few minutes ago, but when I started writing it, I just wanted to put down some of my experiences and excuse me, and what I had learned from them and how I approached different parts of going from being a failed carnival owner, somebody who wasn't happy with his life, not knowing where his future was going to be, not thinking he had many skills, and how I went from that to somebody who has 2 websites and 2 blogs and has, clients all over the world for his equipment selling business and things like that. And so I just tried to do my best to think about, okay, how did I get here, and what can how much of that can I share with other people as far as the experiences and the process to where maybe they can do it for themselves.
Yeah. So basically the audience, those that would read your book, they would get some information on how to transform their lives or transform their aspirations from one point to the other. Because you indicated that you're not focusing on yourself, you're focusing on what someone else would need in order to experience their journey.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's great. So tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurship. What challenges did you face in that area?
Well, the challenges started actually before I even started the business, because when I first decided to start the business, I didn't have the first clue about, I would say about 99% of the stuff I do now, I had no idea. I filed for the domain name because I knew I had to have a website, but this was in 2007, before a lot of businesses had websites or used them actively. At that time, MySpace was still the #1 social media network. In my house, we had to use a dial-up internet connection. So, we're talking about the very early days of the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
So at first, I didn't even know what a website was or how we were going to build one. My brother, Michael, who's one of these people who I think has an extra gene in his body because he understands technological and computer stuff, and he was able to figure out a way to create my first website and get it online in a way where I didn't have to do anything but just supply the information. He even found a thing that would let me upload photos and write and game descriptions without having to know how it worked, which was fine with me at the time. Then he got a high-paying job, and I was like, okay, now I have a website. I'm sure I'm going to need to maintain this website. I know I want to grow it. I want to add things to it. Like I wanted to add a featured items section and have photos of stuff on the front page. I wanted to add videos. I wanted to add a links section to connect with other people in the business. And I'm like, how do I do all this stuff? And I was like, okay, Maxwell, you don't know, so start asking, which is one of the things I really believe in. If you've checked me out at all, one of my core things is if you don't ask, they can't say yes, which is something my daddy taught me.
Yeah.
So I started asking a bunch of stupid questions online, and eventually somebody got tired of answering my questions and forwarded me to the w3c.org school, which is an online tutorial system for people wanting to build their own websites. I should mention that I was having more trouble than most because if you can see, you can use what they call a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get way of creating a website. I couldn't do that. So I had to actually hand code my website one line at a time of HTML code, which for anybody out there who's ever done it, it's mind-numbing, tedious, difficult, but it still requires a high level of concentration, because if you get even one character wrong, your website is broken until you figure out where that character went to.
Yeah.
I tell you, I thank God, and I don't say this facetiously because I respect him. I believe in it. He's done a lot for me in my life. I thank God for whoever created WordPress for me, and for the people who helped me transfer my website from HTML to WordPress, where so much of that stuff is automated for me now. And the only time I really have to even think about HTML code is if I want to do something and I can do it quicker than I can using the WordPress dashboard. So, but I started doing the W3C schools. I did one tutorial at a time. I created my first website, and I'll be honest with you, it was ugly. It was gaudy. It was a bright yellow background, blue text, red link characters, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but then if you click the link, it would change color to a different color to remind people they've already been to that link before. That color was orange. So I later found out that I chose my colors using the color names instead of the color numbers. I later found out that my yellow was an ice creaming yellow, that my blue was a dark navy, the red was a bright dark brick red. I was told more than once that Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder could have had an argument over this website. It was so bright. And
it's amazing that, you're really coming up with a wonderful concept, because normally they say, well, if you want to know what your audience thinks, do a feedback form or create a survey and send it out there and get information. But I like the way that you were contacting them on your website and saying, what do you think about this? And they're giving you feedback, regarding your website. And that's awesome too,
Oh yeah, I totally
something from you there. Ask them on your website or your Facebook page or, your LinkedIn or Twitter, whatever it is. Just go ahead and ask them right there and let them give you feedback. That's great.
Yeah, and I'll give you an extra tip to that. The same people who will ignore your post if you write a post saying, hey, here, I've got a new blog post, or hey, here, I just posted a new ride listing. The same people that will ignore that, if you post the same link and you go, hey, I would like to know how this link looks. Can you tell me if it reads well, if you can understand it? Is the format, ask them questions like that. And the same link will get 3, 4, 5 times the responses on social media than it would if you posted it with the idea of sharing it as a promotional type of link. And it's just crazy how that works. I mean, I did it because I'm blind and I had no choice. But I think more people should do that, because it's just one of those things. People can't help but help other people. Even if they're not nice people most of the time, and they see those posts and they can't help themselves. So yeah. I still do it even now. But the other thing you mentioned there is I don't like to sit around and do surveys and ask too many people for too many of their opinions. I would rather go ahead and do the work and have it turn out maybe not being perfect than to talk about it for 6 months and still not having done anything. And that's one of the things that I really, really believe more people need to just face the fear and press send or publish or upload or whatever to get their stuff out there in the world.
Yeah, wow. So there was a time that you actually weighed 500 pounds, which is quite interesting. But I just want to put this disclaimer out there about this conversation we're getting ready to have, and that is, it is not intended as a reference of communication. It's not actually medical advice, nor is it replacing the advice of your counselor, your pastor, your psychiatrist, or your physician, and nor is it to substitute for any treatment prescribed by anyone. So if you feel that you're ill or you suspect that you have a spiritual, mental, or medical problem, we strongly encourage that you consult your pastor, counselor, medical, health, or competent professional before adopting any of the suggestions in the conversation or drawing inferences from it. So
can I say one thing more about that?
It worked for Max, so we're hoping it will work for you. So Max, tell us about how you were able to overcome weighing 500 pounds.
Right. Before I start talking about that, I want to piggyback off of what you just said with your disclaimer and your warning there. When you talk to your counselor, your minister, your doctor, if you don't tell them everything, if you are completely honest and open and forthright, and even the stuff that you don't think is wrong, if you don't get all of that stuff out and on the table with these people, then you need to do one or two things. You need to accept that you're never going to change, or you need to get somebody that you can feel comfortable enough with to discuss all of that. Because I tell people one of the big things that has allowed me to do what I've done in the physical area of my life is I had a great primary care physician named Dr. Sandaraj who dealt with my health issues as we went along. And, she did her best to expose me to things that I needed to hear about. The first thing she did was she said, Mr. Ivey, just judging by your breathing and looking at you and knowing that you're a really heavy person, I think you may have sleep apnea. So the first thing she did was encourage me to get a sleep study, something my dad had told me I needed to do 30 years earlier. But I had balked. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to admit that my snoring was more than snoring, and that's pretty common with men. I had the sleep study, and it determined not only did I have sleep apnea, but I'd had it for many, many years. It was a severe case, and they put me on a compressed air machine called a CPAP. And I know men are going to think I'm picking on them, or women are going to think I'm sexist in this next comment, but women, if your husband, boyfriend, son, father, if any of them snore, no matter and especially if they snore loudly, if they growl or their teeth grit when they're sleeping, do whatever you have to do to get them to have a sleep study, because the medical side effects of not getting good sleep, and even to the point where your breathing is cutting off while you're asleep, is very, very serious. Some of the side effects are high blood pressure, increased risk of stroke, impotence, lack of interest in things that used to bring you pleasure. It can eventually cause an early death. And the other thing is, since you stop breathing, it can cause you to void your bowels. I mean, the worst side effect is that if you're not getting good sleep, you don't have the energy or the passion to do the things that you were meant to come here to do. And I just know there are way too many people out there who their sleep or lack of it is one of the main reasons why they're still stuck. So women, if you have a man in your life and you think they may have apnea, get them tested. So, and the fact that I started getting better rest was one of the things that really helped me in starting my new business and going from there. Because if you're not getting good rest, you don't have the level of passion that you will if you do. She then encouraged me to lose weight, which most doctors will tell men to do, and I tried, but it wasn't working. And she finally said, Mr. Ivey, I know you're against it, but would you at least go to a seminar on gastric surgery? And I said, okay, I will go to one. So find me one to go to. And they eventually found a place called Texas Laparoscopic Consultants. And I'm not saying that as a promotional for that. I'm saying them because I have to give thanks for my personal well-being. I have to be appreciative to people that I now consider part of my family because of the way that they treated me. And I went down there and I listened to the seminar. And they basically addressed all my real problems with having surgery. And the first one was that if you had the surgery, it was a guarantee that you would lose the weight. And that's not true, because all the surveys that they've done over the years say that only 50% of the people who have a gastric procedure will lose 80 to 90% of the weight they need to lose. So not everybody that has a surgery is successful. Some people will lose weight and then gain it back. Some people will even find a way to gain weight. It's usually people that have the band or the new balloon, but they're because they haven't changed their life. They haven't used all the tools that are at their disposal to change the way they eat, their exercise, their sleep, water. For me, as you know from my bio, I also believe that prayer and meditation are very important. That you have to ask for help from everywhere you can get it from, because weight is one of those things. It's just really hard to lose it and keep it off. Because not only is it the physical, but it's also the emotional, because many, many people lose weight and still never see themselves as thin or healthy. Just like there are many women it's especially women, but there are many people out there who are unhealthy they're so skinny, they're so small, they're unhealthy, but they see themselves as fat. So a lot of times not only the physical, but it's the emotional that you have to get past if you're going to lose weight and keep it off. The other thing they told me is that, that you are going to have to change your life. You're going to have to make a lot of changes, but you can make them one small change at a time. They told me to pick one thing and do that for a month or two and then pick something else and add on to it. They said eventually I would get to the point where I would be able to handle living after I had the surgery. And they were right. It was one of those things where, I had to switch liquids for solids and stop drinking milk and juice and start eating cheese and apples. I had to start drinking a lot more water. I had to accept the fact that these vitamins I'll be taking them for the rest of my life. And there's, the size of the portions, even the size of the spoon, fork, or knife you use, changing to using smaller utensils because it encourages you to take smaller bites and enjoy and have that food that you have on that plate last you longer.
Yeah.
And one of the big things we talk about a lot in our support groups, which, you mentioned that earlier, we have an online and an in-person support group with my clinic. But one of the things we talk about in our support groups is satiation, is eating in a way that you're satisfied with the food to the point that you don't feel hungry 10 or 15 or 20 minutes after you finish a meal.
Yeah.
And, that usually is about not watching television while you eat, not drinking while you eat, actually taking the time to sit down instead of eating while you're driving, walking, or standing up. There's lots of little things you can do. But the real thing is to enjoy the food that you do eat so that you don't feel hungry as quickly or as often. So those are the kind of things. And, to be honest about it, for me, it all really comes down to this. I used to think that having a surgery and losing weight by having a surgery was easy. Once I found out that it was going to take work, I was in it. Because I'm one of those people, if you tell me it's going to be easy, I don't believe you. I think there must be something wrong. There's some trick. You're probably lying to me. But if you tell me I have to work, I'm interested.
Yeah. I think everyone, even now though, some people are looking for the easy way out, but I'm sure that based on the challenges you have faced, is that everything requires work and effort. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, everything does. And I think I want to lead from that into one of my favorite big myths. And it's one of the biggest myths is that you get to a point where you're done, where you no longer have to keep thinking or working on something to stay at the level you're at or to move forward. And I think especially with weight, people keep hoping that this next diet, this next procedure is going to allow them to get to that point where they no longer have to think, worry, or work on it anymore.
Yeah, because, most of the time when someone comes to a coach, they believe that the coach is going to be the miracle part of the coaching. But in everything in life, it requires work and effort. And even our Christian walk, our faith, it requires work and effort. It's not going to be like a handkerchief is shaken in front of you and then poof, everything is well. It requires work and effort.
Right. And the Bible even tells us that we are not meant to be people of ease, that the walk with God is going to take effort, that we will have to struggle to stay on that right path, and that we will, that as long as we're here, we are here for a purpose. We may not understand all the time what his purpose for us is, but as long as we're here, he has some reason for us to get up every morning, and it's not to sit on the couch and watch TV or sit on the porch and watch the birds.
I like that. I mean, that's nice. It feels good, and it sounds peaceful, and it feels peaceful. But it's not dealing with the inner part of us about having our spirit aligned with his will. And it takes effort. Do you subscribe to faith as being one of the most valuable assets in life and helping you to maximize your potential in all areas. Hello everyone, I just want to take time to thank you for watching the Kingdom Hour. I hope you were blessed. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, KEITV12, and also follow us at KEITV12-channel on Facebook. And God bless you all. Again, thank you for watching the Kingdom Hour.